Welcome to the official Colts podcast. I'm Jeffrey Gorman, joined weekly by Miss Larra Overton and JJ Stankevitz, covering the Colts like no other. Today is a great show. We have a very special international surprise, which we don't bring in international surprises a lot on this show, but
Do
today
we bring in domestic surprises?
that's true. No surprises a lot, but there is one today. This is an international superstar who's going to be saying hello to you later on in the show. More of that to come, but folks, we've got the combine behind us right now. You were down there doing the legwork, talking to the people that it is. We heard Chris Ballard, we heard Shane Steichen. Now we have to fill out this roster. There are voids on this roster. That we don't know yet if those voids are there yet, JJ. It's a tough time of year because you're looking at, obviously, the combine and the players that could fill some needs. You're looking at free agency, which is right around the corner. And Chris Ballard has spoken about, hey, we've got a ways to go. We've got to fill out this roster, and we've got to get better. So I want to start with you. When we talk about it, we've spoken about this, Larra, in the last couple of weeks. I want to start at the quarterback position and the competition that's been spoke of again and again and again. Does this look like a free agent that comes in, gives some competition to Anthony Richardson? And my question is, and I'll shut up, is there also a rookie that's looked at that is brought in?
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance that it's both. That you will see a free agent be brought in, and you'll also see a rookie. Because, I mean, look at this depth. All you have to do is look at the depth chart. I'm not breaking news here, but Joe Flacco's a free agent, and Sam Ehlinger's a free agent. If you don't bring either of those guys back, you probably have room on your roster for a veteran backup or a veteran to compete with Anthony Richardson, I should say, and a rookie who could also compete there. So I think that just makes sense that the Colts would go that route. Now, you could look at, you got Jason Bean as potentially a guy who, if you liked what you saw to him on the practice squad last year, maybe he gets a chance to compete. But I think you're probably going to see the Colts, kind of double dip in that room this offseason.
Larra, you were down at the combine, so I'm asking, and all the scouts are there, Chris Ballard and his staff, they were looking at quarterbacks. It's just what they do. I mean,
they do that every year.
You have to do that every year.
You have to, so they know about the rooks.
And not just so you know about the rookies, but another reason that they do their due diligence, and this is something that we learned by working with the scouts through with the next pick and behind the Colts, is sometimes you may not draft a guy at a particular position, quarterback included, but if he becomes a free agent in 4 years, you've already done the legwork on the background of him. Hey, we liked him coming out. This is an opportunity now that we might be able to get him. We're going to pursue it now. Because just because you don't draft a guy doesn't mean you're never going to cross paths with that guy again, right? Like, you probably went back, for, when you think about bringing in, when you brought in Carson Wentz, for example. You probably looked at Carson Wentz in the draft process already. So you already had a body of work in addition to then looking at that, thinking about how he interviewed, how, you just for one, various example, then you ended up bringing him in later in his career. So certain times there are opportunities to trade for a player or to acquire a player in free agency that it's really beneficial to have already had some sort of experience in, spending time, on campus, pro days, combine, those different situations, because what you want to do is not just have, whether you're drafting a guy, signing a free agency, you don't just want one touch point on a guy.
Exactly.
Or you're relying on, hey, okay, this guy played previously in, played for the Minnesota Vikings, say, we're all that we can go off of is what Minnesota tells us about this guy. You can't put yourself in that type of a position. So that is one of the reasons you see whether or not you are really going to make a move at a particular position, that particular draft, you're still going to do the work there and, exhaust everything, because while you have these guys in your backyard, you get them for these meetings of 20 minutes or whatever it is. You get to meet with the head coach. You get to meet with the position group specific guys. Those are really valuable evaluation points of these various guys.
It's why the whole have you met with the team during the combine isn't really news, because, so think about 2021. You brought up Carson Wentz. The Colts traded for Carson Wentz that year, and that deal was kind of agreed to before the combine, right? But I believe the Colts still met with quarterbacks at the combine, or they met with quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl, or they had them in for 30, whatever it was, because you have to do your due diligence years in advance. So even if you have Andrew Luck, coming off of a great year in 2018. In 2019, if I had to guess, the Colts did their homework on quarterbacks that year. You never know who's going to become available, when they're going to become available, and if you might need to go back to that evaluation and say, we like what this guy did, we don't like what this guy did, to better inform you on a decision you might need to make 5, 6, 7 years down the road.
And look, the Philadelphia Eagles, like I have not talked to Howie Roseman, but I bet Howie Roseman and his staff are probably still looking at quarterbacks. You know, like they're just going to look at quarterbacks in the draft.
Yeah.
They're probably going to look at running backs in the draft. Not saying that anyone is going to supersede Jalen Hurts or Saquon Barkley, but you have to look at those, various positions. It's just what you do.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, is that this period of the year, you're building your draft board, you're setting your draft board, but you also do have to be forward thinking about it. You can't be siloed into this is just for this year. Because, and also, too, you never know what's going to happen in the draft. If you have a top line grade on a guy,
yes,
and all of a sudden he's sitting there in the second round and you don't quote unquote need him, but you're like, this guy's a difference maker, go ahead and take him. Like, that stuff can happen. So just because, the Colts did their due diligence or whatever it is, like, it doesn't, I went on this rant last week on the pod, so I'm not going to do it again about have you met with the Colts?
Okay.
How it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to do it, and I'm just going to stop right here before I do it again.
Okay.
Because you want to grind my gears.
No one wants to grind your
My
gears.
favorite thing to do, though, at the Combine is to walk up to like an Eric Edholm and just be like, hey, Eric, good to see you. Now you've met with the Colts. Yeah, see? Yeah.
It's got a point there.
One thing that I was listening to, so got to catch up with Courtney Cronin of ESPN, good friend of ours, obviously. And one thing that I was hearing from her just this morning, actually, I was going to meet JJ for a workout, as a matter of fact. We've spent a lot of time together.
Nice.
Already today.
Yeah, already today. And so Courtney was discussing that the Minnesota Vikings are not going to franchise tag Sam Darnold. He's obviously one of those probably more sought after free agent quarterbacks. How does that maybe kind of, I don't want to say reshape, but like, how does that kind of be the first domino to fall in terms of the quarterbacks who are available and what the implications may be for teams that are exploring options at that position?
Right, because Matthew Stafford was kind of the first domino. He goes back to LA, now it's Darnold. And we're recording this at 10:40. I think it was reported the Vikings are not going to use the franchise tag on Darnold. Does that push him down? Does that now kind of push the rest of the quarterbacks down a little bit in the pecking order of like, if you're the Raiders and you need a quarterback, how does Sam Darnold now being available impact what you're going to do? And then that has a trickle-down effect all the way down to the Colts with who could be available among the free agents who are out there who you want to bring in for Anthony Richardson to compete with him.
Safe to say that a veteran will be brought in, and you're not surprised. We love that segment. Not surprised if a rookie comes in. Guys, I'm going to roll around the position groups of this offense, then go into defense. Larry, you talked about running backs a little bit ago. We got Trey Sermon, we got Tyler Goodson, but obviously Jonathan Taylor. Does that room look similar to you next year with those three guys, or is it a complete overhaul through the draft and or free agency? We saw in the last couple of years what it meant not to have a quality veteran running back. No knock on Goodson, no knock on Sermon, but Zach Moss did a nice job a couple seasons ago.
And Goodson's back, right? Goodson's already signed, right, JJ?
Yes, he is under contract this year, yes.
So you've got JT. I do think you're going to look different. I think you want to bring in something that is a bit of a change of pace for that running back room, because you saw the production so drastically drop off when Jonathan Taylor was not on the field, and the workload that Jonathan Taylor carried in 2024 was immense, right? And not to say that he can't continue to be, he's obviously your bell cow guy, but yes, you kind of go back, and when you did have, I even think about when it was Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, and how much value.
Chris Ballard talked a lot about Zach Moss last week.
You know how I feel.
Right.
Love Zach Moss. And I just think that it really benefited this offense, especially when you have a mobile quarterback, a running quarterback like an Anthony Richardson, to really have to keep defenses on their toes, make them play back in their heels by having to consider all of these different ways that you're able to run the football. Is it 5 and 28 on the field? Is it 5 and insert other running back? Is it 5 and 2 running backs on the field in particular situations?
I think one of the biggest questions I have is whatever the Colts do behind Jonathan Taylor, is that guy brought in to be a complement to him? So you're thinking like your third down back, your guy's in there as a pass pro guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Or is he more like Zach Moss, where Zach Moss he was RB2, and it was hey, you can put him in at any point in the game, and you're going to feel good about him. That's a really, because Nyheim was kind of more of your complement.
Yes.
And Zach Moss is kind of more of your really good backup, your high-end backup. So what direction do the Colts go kind of based on those two archetypes? I don't know, and I'm really interested to
Not
find
surprised, guys, if a veteran comes in. Not surprised?
No, not surprised.
No, and I wouldn't.
But it's also,
I
apparently
wouldn't be
it's
surprised if you draft someone.
It's a super deep draft for running back.
Absolutely.
Someone was saying that there were I think maybe it was McShay, that there were 34 draftable running backs this year who he had draftable grades on. That's an insane number. Mm-hmm. This is a year, if you need a running back to be number one on your depth chart, number two, or number three, this is a really good year to have those needs.
Hey, something else when you talk about this offense, and this is going to be a funny one. This is one that I've been waiting to ask you guys about this. How different is the wide receiver room next season? Now we saw. I
don't think very different.
We saw the rise of Alec Pierce. We saw this. A.D. Mitchell right now, we've been talking about him going into year two. I guess my question is, does the draft come into play on this wide receiver room, or is it not looked at and possibly, some undrafted free agents just to compete?
The draft could come into play if the right guy is there. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to say, I don't think you're ever going to pass on a wide receiver who you think could be a really good an impact player. But I think there's a really good chance that all 6 guys who were on the roster last year are back.
Yes.
Because you've got 5 under contract in Pittman, Pierce, Downs, Mitchell, and Gould. And then I think Ashton Doolin, as a special teams guy, you'd love to have him back. And we'll see how things play out next week. But then, okay, there's your 6.
Right.
I think, too, the way that this wide receiver room looks different to me is in a number of ways of Josh Downs being an immediate contributor much sooner. Obviously, he had more of a delayed start to the season based on the ankle injury. He's going to be a huge priority in terms of this offensive success early on. Michael Pittman, we know what he was playing through all season long. And obviously his numbers were down just based on, a number of facets. In particular, the fact that he had the back that he was battling through and, probably could have gone on to IR positions, but, fought through so much. So he is going to be even more of a force, this year. Now you've established what Alec Pierce can do. So I think that there are just a number of areas of this wide receiver room that you are investing in just by knowing, hey, these guys are going to be a significant priority. This is going to be the way that we are going to structure and build our offense is by getting these guys and making sure that these are foundations, these are pillars of our offense, especially early on in the season, right? Like when you didn't have Josh and then Pitt gets banged up, these different things. So that's going to be an immense help, especially when you think about Anthony Richardson is not missing time this offseason, right?
You can throw with them sooner.
Yes.
More impactfully.
Exactly. He's not going to have to wait until, the spring or whatever it might be. These guys are able to get together, whether it's right now, whether it's over this summer, well prior to training camp. So I just think that collectively, you're going to see so much more cohesiveness and balance and consistency within the offense. Because
Real quick, it's easy for me to say the Colts haven't given up on A.D. Mitchell, because they haven't. He's in year 2. Another group of people who have not given up on A.D. Mitchell? Draft people. Mm-hmm. You talk to any draft guy around the combine, and I asked Daniel Jeremiah this.
Yeah.
Who, I was give me a player who's been drafted in the last couple of years with the Colts, who you're very interested to see how he develops in year 2, year 3. And A.D. Mitchell, right off the bat. Those guys, that group of people, people who analyze the draft, still love A.D. Mitchell and still think he's got a ton of upside. So I wouldn't give up on him either.
No, heck no. With a year under his belt and coming in, has a special skill set, so it's going to be fun. Now, guys, it's the bright, shiny object, all right? It's the big, flashy thing that everybody's looking at, and it's the tight end room. And when people talk about this draft, Larra, there's some names out there that are. There's some names on the free agent market as well. Does this room look completely different?
Yes.
Is it an overhaul next year in the tight end room?
Probably. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the fact that you have a number of guys who are free agents in that room. Kylan Granson and Mo Ali Cox both are free agents. I do think you like what you have with Drew Ogletree and what he gives you. Will Mallory is obviously, around what you drafted him 2 years ago. See kind of what the plan is for him. But I do think that you are probably going to address that position group, that room, maybe in a number of different ways. Maybe it is drafting one and then reinforcing it by signing another guy. I do think you need to, in order to equip Anthony Richardson to be successful, and obviously this is, a significant year for him and his growth and development in this offense in general with the third year under Shane and all of these things, that is an asset that you need to provide to him, right? That's something that, do this offense, collectively, that's something that you haven't necessarily, you've gotten these guys involved, but it's never been, I think, to the degree of consistent production that you would have hoped to see. It's kind of like, hey, if you're going to put this responsibility on Anthony Richardson to say, like, okay, like, you're the guy, take the lead, prove who you can be, as a franchise quarterback, all of that. You also have to surround him by the pieces with the elements that are going to allow him to do that. And the investment that he's making, right, you're reinforcing that there. Similar in the sense that for Lou Anarumo, if you're like, okay, we want you to be successful as a defense, you're going to have to give him some pieces to work with too and reinforce some areas as, you look especially to, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but safety and DBs. If you are bringing certain people into the building, and you are investing in them and, you are gambling on them and what they're going to do, or, then you also have to surround them with certain elements in order to do that.
If tight ends are at 14, a guy that they covet, are they snatching them up? I'm not mentioning any names, but when this draft comes up.
I mean, I would be curious of where tight end ranks on like the tiebreakers of the Colts. We're not going to know that until the day of the draft. But that is a position that is, I think, the way the Colts have addressed it recently, I don't think has been the wrong way. This is where I will defend the process that the Colts have had, where they have thrown quite a few draft picks at it. Kylan Granson was a 4th rounder. Jelani Woods was a 3rd rounder. Drew Ogletree was a 6th rounder. Will Mallory was a 5th rounder. That's kind of that range where you do see a lot of tight ends who are among the better guys in the league. That's where they start to kind of develop from. Those guys have not panned out the way that I think you would hope. I think Ogletree still has some upside. We don't know what you really have in Will Mallory yet. But
Jelani Woods, guys, I'm sorry, but coming healthy.
You got to stay healthy.
If you get anything out of him this year, it's a bonus.
Okay.
I mean, you hope he can be healthy. You hope he can show that kind of potential, but you're 3 years removed from that. So, you hope the best for Jelani.
Understood,
you hope he can do it, but I think you cannot treat what you get out of him as a guarantee. Yeah. If that makes sense.
I'm also looking to...
So anyway, to answer your question, I'm not surprised.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, just how beneficial it's been for some of these young quarterbacks, young developing quarterbacks, to have tight ends, like consistent playmaking, dynamic tight ends. Like you think about Zach Ertz in Washington with Jaden Daniels.
That's a great call. That's a great call.
Look, I mean, I'm kind of like going around too.
Is Zach Ertz a top 10 tight end in the NFL anymore? Probably not, but like... He's a
immense
reliable veteran.
In that offense with Cliff Kingsbury. Also, I mean, just like in New England, I kind of forgot, like Austin Hooper, and
Hunter Henry there.
Both veterans.
Yes. Look at those guys. So if you're looking to some situations in which the quarterback growth has been imperative in relation to having that type of a weapon at the tight end position, I think there's something to it.
Yeah, I mean, you can also think Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, George Kittle and Brock Purdy. I mean, you can go down the list there.
I'm going to move on because we get the offensive line coming up. But my question is, it's been coming around. Larra, let me start with you. A quality, a proven, whatever, a high rookie draft choice comes in at tight end. 39 catches last year for the tight end room. Mm-hmm. But if there is a quality tight end out there, whether it's free agent or through the draft, and those guys get 60, 70 balls, 65 catches a year, how does that affect this offense? And I'm talking about Josh Downs there, who's a 60-ball-a-year guy, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? When you have a proven tight end that you know is going to get you 60 catches, what does this offense look like?
Here's the needle you have to thread is that guy's probably got to be a wide tight end. Mm-hmm. If you have because you can make it work with a guy who's maybe a little more of a lighter guy who can come down and block a little bit, but if you're going to have a 230-pound tight end be your number one guy, that might impact Josh Downs. That might drop his production a little bit. I don't know if you want that.
Yeah.
That's why it's that Y guy, that inline guy who, when he's on the field, it is a 50-50 split between pass and run because he doesn't have a very narrow skill set, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. All right, let's keep moving on here. The offensive line, I've been waiting for this one. Larra, let's go to you. Left side of that line, Bernard Ryman.
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Nelson. Mm-hmm. Question mark at center, Ryan Kelly, a free agent. Right guard, Will Fries, free agent. Right tackle, Braden Smith. You know, now we've got Gonsalves from last year, Bortolini from last year. Guys, I'm excited about this because how many new faces do you think are in that offensive line room? And I know it's a big if because you got a veteran like Kelly out there, and the alternative is a second-year guy in Tanner Bortolini. So how different does this offensive line look like?
You think about Danny Pinter, too.
Danny Pinter's in there. Dalton Tucker got reps last year as well.
I think maybe one. I think there might be one.
I think you're right. I think this is the group that you can have continuity with this offseason. Now, the question I have when you get into, if you know, we're recording this on Tuesday, there's still time for the Colts to have exclusive negotiating rights with Ryan Kelly, with Will Fries.
And I believe Chris, you had mentioned that, right? Didn't he say at the podium he would
have some meetings,
planning to meet this week with a few guys?
So something could happen between now and then. But if it doesn't, what domino has to fall first on this line? Is it Kelly or is it Fries? Like that's my, if you try to get Will Fries back and some team snatches him away, does that increase your odds of retaining Ryan Kelly? Or is it the reverse of that? If you are able to keep Will Fries around, does that decrease your odds of keeping Ryan Kelly? Or is it Ryan Kelly is the first guy you're coming? I don't know how that's going to play out, but that's something that one of the first things I'm going to be tracking starting next Monday and into next Wednesday is how do those guys play things out? Ryan Kelly's also a guy who could very well take his time in free agency. Like he could be like a lot of the guys who are going into their second contracts in free agency, they get snapped up like that. You'll see veterans who are in their 30s maybe take their time a little bit more because they're looking for the right fit.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of guys who are, you're trying to get the biggest bite of the apple you can coming off your rookie contract. That's not the case for everyone, but that's just kind of a general statement. So how those guys are prioritized and in what order do they sign is going to be really interesting.
Really quick, Braden Smith. I mean, we heard Chris Ballard talk about that. We didn't see him for the last 5-6 weeks of the season. Yeah. Talked about some stuff off the field and everything. Now he says, hey, he wants to play football again. That doesn't throw a wrench into the thing. That's good news for us there.
Oh, absolutely.
So any update on that sort of thing? What's going on as far as two things, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Braden Smith, we'll look for that, on the upside of that. And also Will Fries. I hate asking this question because I don't know, and I don't think you guys know, but is he ready? I mean, is he ready to go when Westfield opens up? Not OTAs. I know he's going through this stuff, but is he there to get some quality snaps and potentially get into the preseason mix?
I mean, I think, there's only so much that you can do with guys at this point, in the season, right? They're very protected with where you are. But I do know that Will has been in terms of working and rehabbing and doing everything. He's the guy who I doubt that he has probably missed a day, in terms of work. So I do think that obviously it's very difficult to say, oh, he'll be 100% ready to go on report day.
Right.
That's just an unfair expectation to say. But what I will say is he's giving himself every chance and every opportunity to be 100% reliable when he gets that full clearance to go. And, he's been, I don't know if he posts as much, but his girlfriend, Izzy, she'll post, time to time.
Fiance.
Yes. Sorry. Fiance. Yes. No disrespect to Izzy because she's in full wedding planning mode right now. Actually talked with Will the other day and I was like, where was Izzy? I feel like she's traveling. He's like, oh, wedding planning. It's full tilt. So I do think that, he's shown immense strides. And here's the thing that when it's a guy who was a 7th round draft pick who works his way in to be not just a starter, but a key starter, one of those guys who is, regarded as part of the soul of this offensive line. Yeah, that's not a guy who I'm going to be concerned about if he is going to do everything to be sure he's 100% ready to go, healed, making sure that, he's using all of this time to be sure that, he's back on the field with his teammates. It's a guy who has an immense amount of, care in his teammates, in his work ethic, all of that, making sure that he's available.
And Glowinski, too. We got the Glowinski question mark out there.
Yeah.
Mark came in, played some quality football. He's
Sure
a veteran,
did.
so we're going to find out. All right, guys, switching to the defense. I know you're chomping at the bit, the Lou Anarumo defense that is coming. I want to start at the linebacker position. The big question mark out there, EJ Speed, where are they at with that? My first question is this, guys. Does the linebacker room... does the draft come into play with the linebacker room? And also, does Jalen Carley's, is he that guy that if EJ Speed were to sign with another team, is that a seamless transition?
So I was thinking about this. Like, we both are big Jalen Carley's supporters. I wonder if the Colts go the route, because, look, it is a new defense of Lou Anarumo coming in. Maybe you sign a veteran and it's more of a competition there.
Okay.
I'd be curious if that's going to wind up being the case there.
I'd also say if there's a position group that you have hit on in the draft, it's been linebacker.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, on day 3. Yeah. and day
Leonard?
2 for Shaq.
Shaq Leonard.
And then everyone else on day 3.
But just in general.
No, actually, Bobby was day 2. I take that back. Bobby Okereke was day 2. Okay.
Yeah. One of the guys who I would like to see brought back is Grant Stewart.
Yes.
When
Special teams and
when I look at that room.
But also he had 19 tackles that one game he started against Miami. So, yeah. I think that's going to be an interesting one. And here's kind of my overarching question with the defense. How many former Bengals are on this team after free agency kind of slows down?
It's a good call. That's natural.
Is it one? Is it two? Is it none? That's kind of something that's been stuck in my head because you'll see that, right?
Yeah.
You'll see, this isn't maybe the best example, but when the Colts hired Gus Bradley in 2022 and they needed a cornerback, they brought in Brandon Faison.
That's his guy, yeah.
From Vegas.
Right.
And he,
familiarity with him. Same thing with
maybe
Lou,
didn't work out the way that you'd like it to, but that stuff happens.
Okay.
Where guys who are part of a previous regime's defense are free agents, and all of a sudden that coordinator gets hired, and hey, come, you're comfortable, I'm comfortable, come play for us. So I'm curious if it's maybe between one, is it two, again, or it could be none. You never know.
One thing that we've heard about Chris Ballard is loading up the offensive line, loading up the defensive line. That's where the games are won. We've talked about that when he was hired in here. We saw what the Philadelphia Eagles did with, strength on both sides of the ball when it comes to the lines. The defensive line's a big question mark, and it starts with Dio Adangbo. If he was to go to free agency, sign with another team, JJ, I'll start with you very quickly. That's a big hole to fill. That guy got a lot of reps, and he's been like this when he came a second rounder out of Vanderbilt for Chris Ballard.
It is. I think you still have a 4-deep rotation at D end that you feel good about with Laiatu Latu. Chris Ballard said Samson Ebekam's coming back. He's tracking pretty well. Kwity Paye, and then Tyquan Lewis. You can always bolster that. You can never have too many defensive linemen.
Right.
We know that. The Colts are going to go into last year with those same 4 plus Dio until Samson got hurt. Because, again, one of those 4 guys gets hurt, and all of a sudden you're light. But Dio being that kind of chess piece who can move inside, he can be outside, that would be a role you would need to fill. But we'll see. With Lou Anarumo coming in, the defensive tackle is going to be interesting.
Larra, please.
You've got Taven Bryan, who's going to be free agent, a guy who played some snaps in there.
Yes.
Raekwon Davis, we'll see if you get any more out of him in year 2. You got Adetomiwa Adebawore on this roster, but do you try to look to bolster that as well? Because
absolutely. It's
Buck and Grove are great,
right?
But they can't play 100% of the snaps,
right.
So you've got to be able. We're talking.
You got gashed. When those guys weren't on the field.
You're talking about the drop off from Jonathan Taylor to number 2 at running back. The drop off from those 2 guys to you just look at the on-off stats when they were against the run, and it was rough. That's got to be better.
We talked to a lot of draft experts, Larry, and they said this draft, you know what I mean? When it comes to first rounders, how many are there? I love playing that game. Are there 10 true first rounders?
That's always so funny because you'll get like the people who get really annoyed with semantics being like, no, there are 32 first rounders. And then you'll get scouts who are like, there are 10.
Yeah, there's 10 that quality. But my question is that when you get into the second, to the third, even to the fourth, there's a lot of beef when it comes to the defensive tackles in this draft.
Yeah.
Chris Ballard, this upcoming draft, it's cheap. It's a middle round guy and stuff like that. And if the quality's there, do you think he'll pounce on him, bring some new faces in the DT room?
Oh, I think so. I think you're going to, absolutely explore what opportunities might be there on day 2 and day 3 for sure. because I do think that those are areas with which you want to reinforce. The depth is so important. I do like the idea of potentially bringing back a guy like Dio Adengbo, and then you have a second year of development with Laiatu Latu, with Coach Partridge and all of that. I do think that potentially, like, the versatility of Dio also, maybe that helps alleviate a little bit of the pressure that's placed upon Laiatu Latu and just allows him to play a little bit freer in year 2. We saw last year. He put so much pressure on himself, right? He had he had these incredible plays, like huge flashes, and just he expects so much out of himself. I think that, as much continuity as you can maybe have with the veterans in that room, and potentially bringing Dio back. You obviously have that great core, group that you have already with, Grove and Buck and Taekwon Lewis and Quiddy and, Sampson back. So I think when you're looking to, some of the development of that group, I like the idea of kind of both, maybe, trying to see what the market is. I also have still nightmares about Danico Autry, moving on and, having to face him twice a year when he went to Tennessee.
Yeah, and then he freaking goes to Houston.
Yes. But I do think there's going to be value. I think that obviously there's always a priority. We know how it is. They love to build from the trenches. So yeah, I think that when you look to, rounds 3, 4, 5, are those great opportunities to
let me throw this back on you here, Jeffrey, just because I was thinking about this. I would not be surprised at 14 if the Colts took any position on defense. If we get to the end of day 1 and the Colts have drafted a D-end, a D-tackle, a linebacker, a safety, or a cornerback, I would not be surprised by any of those positions.
Go back a year. Because we were talking about Laiatu Latu was not a huge name.
No, he was not a buzzy name.
Yes, when it came to inside this house on 56th Street and around the NFL landscape, it was not. Similarities there, but I agree with what you say. A defender comes off the board at 14, not surprised in the league.
Yeah, and it's literally at any of those positions.
Right.
Because you can make a case that you can be better at every single one of those positions.
Right. All right, you guys mentioned some good stuff with Lou Anarumo. I want to go to that safety position. I want to talk about Lou Anarumo's defense. Yeah. And also, guys, answer me this. He's coming in. Does this regime, Shane Steichen and everyone say, hey, Coach Lou, what do you need? Talk to me. What do you need? Because the reason I want to start at safety is you've got a guy that's going up like this in Nick Cross. Mm-hmm. You've got Julian Blackman, who's out there on the market, a veteran. Does Anarumo's defense demand a veteran come in to complement Nick Cross to make this defense hum?
I don't think it has to be a veteran.
I think you'll see a veteran at either corner or safety.
Okay.
I don't know about both. Maybe both. But the question I have is, if you can only take one swing at secondary in free agency, say that's how the market shakes out, is that swing at a corner or is it at a safety?
Yep.
Can I throw a little analogy at you guys?
It.
Okay. Who does the cooking in your respective households?
I would say 60-40 Betsy.
70-30 Reem, yeah.
Okay. Who does the grocery shopping?
Mostly Betsy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes our kids make us buy a bunch of stuff we don't need.
Okay. Jeffrey?
That'd be me. I really enjoy grocery shopping. So
that's
kind of my thing. Yeah,
I love grocery shopping. So I shop and I cook. All right. Here's where I'm going, and hopefully everyone's bearing with me. And this is like a
it's good. It's good.
I like this. You close your laptop for this.
Yeah, I'm settling in here. I'm on one. I'm on one right now. Okay. If you two are cooking dinner and you haven't shopped for the groceries, what typically happens? Like if you're like, okay, I know I want to make JJ's signature spaghetti and meatballs, but maybe you didn't do the grocery shopping and you're starting to assemble everything. What typically happens?
Right. Why do we not have ground pork?
Exactly.
Good. I like where you're going with
this.
Where's
the Parmigiano Reggiano or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. If you are going to expect Lou Anarumo to cook a defensive feast, you got to let Lou Anarumo shop for
There you go.
Okay.
Let Lou cook. Let Lou cook.
One of my second favorite cooking analogies I've ever heard in regards to football.
Bam!
This is a throwback. I'm about to throw at you guys. You're not ready for this.
Which, if you were here for the pre-show, there were a lot of throwbacks. So
2013, it's April.
Yeah.
I'm at Notre Dame Stadium for their spring media day. And I'm talking to their defensive coordinator, Bob Diaco. If anyone out there remembers Bob Diaco, you'll get a kick out of this. And we're asking about how do you replace Manti Te'o. And he's like, well, every year you're baking a cake with your defense. And, Sometimes it's a sweet vanilla cake. But then sometimes the ingredients you get, you might get some green chilies, and well, that's not going to be a good cake. Maybe we need to not make a cake this year. And,
I like that.
then all I could think about was how the backup linebacker they had replacing Manti Te'o was going to be green chilies going in a vanilla cake. Well, that won't taste very good.
Oh my gosh. So
yeah.
that's
I get it. I like it. Let Lou cook a little bit like this. I want a cooking show. By the way, thanks for the Barefoot Contessa being here and Guy Fieri talking Colts. What
TOC's back, baby. You locked into TOC?
Say again?
Tournament of Champions? You're not locked into
on
TOC.
Jeopardy?
No, Guy Fieri's Tournament of Champions.
No, I don't. Guy and I just say, hey, Guy, and that's it. I just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, you have been in his presence a couple times. Yeah.
I called him Guy once, but no, it'd be a fun cooking show if it isn't. Guys, I'm going to wrap up with this because I talked about it earlier in the show. International superstar is in Indianapolis for a couple of weeks, and we want to introduce him to you. You stay put. Keep your thinking caps on because this young man is going to ask you some questions
Live
about
mailbag.
this Colts from the Netherlands. Come on out. We are talking to Lucas Lejeune from the Netherlands at Dutch Colts Fan on Twitter. Find him there at Dutch Colts Fan. Lucas, so glad you're here. I'm going to get out of your way and clear out. Brother, come on in here and welcome. Well, here, give me a hug. International hug right there.
Thank you for having me.
Let's hear it for Lucas.
Well,
Lucas.
All right, welcome,
Great show so
Lucas.
far.
All right.
I definitely enjoy being here and we're seeing you guys doing this. And I think we've talked about a lot of players right now, right? I mean, we've talked about a lot of position groups, a lot of players. And of course, Jeff introduced me as the international guest today. So I'm like, let's give it a little international twist here.
Okay, I like it.
So we have an international player, right? Marshall Dabo. How does his future with the Colts look like? And how can he maybe eventually make the 53-man roster? What do you guys pick up from him?
He keeps coming back. And, that a lot of these guys who are in that international pipeline, sometimes you see him kind of get, spit up, chewed out a little bit. But he keeps coming back and he keeps working. And, he's got his first couple runs during training camp and preseason play at safety. And, I mean, he's very athletic. And I don't know. We'll see.
I think this
that's a good
presents a
question.
really interesting opportunity for him, too, with Lou Anarumo.
Yeah,
and
new
maybe how
coordinator,
this
yeah.
defense can help him further develop and make that contribution. Hey, the other international player that I'm excited for this season is Bernard Ryman.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's the other guy who's going to have a massive year. And very quickly, shout out to Bernard and Callie. They welcomed their daughter just last week. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
To the Ryman family.
Herzlichen
But-
Glückwunsch, we would say in German to him. Herzlichen Glückwunsch to Bernard for his.
Oh, that's
look at
beautiful.
that. That's
There you go.
great. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I mean, I got to say, we see a lot from Marcel, on social media. I think the Colts do a great job with that. But I'm also, curious, he played in Stuttgart. I think he did really well there. How does his future look like? And, I mean, you mentioned, we can help. We can need a little help in that safety group, right?
Yeah. He'll have an opportunity to compete and earn a roster spot.
Is
And
it Marcel?
yeah.
Yeah, I think also you look at special teams opportunities too,
Yeah.
and how significantly
That's where it would start for him. I would
Yes,
think.
how
Yeah.
significantly
Yeah.
that has contributed to the foundation for guys. So I think for him, that's where I would look to this year is can he be a contributor in that role? Kind of watching him how much run he's getting maybe over the course of training camp.
By the way, I want to shout out Lucas because if you were at the NFL Combine last week, you saw Lucas around, and he wasn't just around to chit chat. You were there to work.
I was, yeah, definitely. It was a great experience, and it was great seeing you guys there as well and see how the Colts do their work there, and also actually got to talk to Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen a little bit, asked them a question.
You got it. That's a good question from Chris Ballard.
I asked him a question like, what can you learn from the Combine, which you cannot at any other event, because that's what my job is at ESPN, try to explain to the people why the NFL is important, why and what the NFL exactly is. And okay, you can go ahead and just watch the Super Bowl, right? I mean, but there's more to the NFL, way more than just the Super Bowl. We got to explain what the draft is and what the way up to the draft is, and that is, of course, Combine is a big part of that as well.
And the answer you got was really interesting because maybe
yes.
for those who didn't hear, what Chris went into is you really get to see how these prospects handle the entire process of the combine. They obviously have these medical evaluations. Well, sometimes, maybe the schedule is lagging behind and a guy's coming in late, or, he's been in different evaluation, different touch points for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours in a row. So maybe he comes in for your interview last. Is he rattled? Is he poised? How is he handling some of those things? And those are really interesting things that I think a lot of times if you're outside, you don't take into consideration how highly that could weigh in terms of the evaluation of a player. Is like, hey, if they're aware that, okay, his schedule has gotten pulled all over the place, but he comes in, very level, still energetic, still professional, all of those things. Like you think about it, like this is like a week-long job interview.
It's
like
grueling. I mean, and I thought what Chris said about like, is the moment too big for these guys was really telling of like, they've, a lot of these guys have played on the highest levels of college and there's been a ton of pressure and now there's a lot of money involved in it, but it is different when you're trying to put on the best showing that you can for these teams. And by the way, you've trained for this. You have trained for the 40 and for the bench press and for these drills, and you've prepared yourself on the teams that you're going to go visit and what you might expect out of it. And yeah, I mean, if you bomb all of that, that's a tough sign. Mm-hmm. But if you thrive in it, that can just be a marker in and of its own, outside of, screaming across the line on the 40-yard dash. Like, the moment was not too big for my guy, Armand Membu from Mizzou.
There you go.
Did you see that?
No.
He's 300 and something pounds, breaking a 5-second 40-yard dash and literally screaming across the
entire
line.
Stadium. Yep.
That was incredible.
Yeah.
The moment's not too big for University of Missouri Tigers.
MIZ.
Football school, baby. No, now we're a basketball school, actually. We're both.
Wow.
We're both.
Wow.
Top 15 in both sports, both the big sports. Couldn't be better to be a Missouri Tiger.
Please tell my Indiana Hoosiers how that is, because,
You're a football school now. Congratulations. Although Mike Woodson, contract extension after the Hoosiers go on a run, right? Right?
He's already announced his
Right?
retirement.
We are off the rails.
We are off the rails.
We're off the rails.
Lucas is
There
like,
you go.
what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Well, it's great sitting in. This is not only like I'm feeling like I'm sitting between two NFL linemen here. It's a big
That is the first
stage
time I've
here,
ever been compared to an NFL lineman.
Well,
Larra,
I
I'm
mean,
guessing
you
can
guys
say
are
the
like the
same.
big guns of the NFL, right? So yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks you so much for having me. Truly appreciate it.
Well, tell the people how they can follow you and
Yes.
follow all of your great
Yes,
content.
absolutely. Well, I mean, Jeff was so nice to give me a shout out before on the podcast as well. But people can follow me at Dutch Colts fan. So that's DUTCH and then Colts fan. And I'll post anything whenever I'm in town or whenever the Colts are coming to Berlin.
I was
going to
say, we'll see you in Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you there. I mean, trying to go there. I mean, I'll go there either way, and we're going to have a great time. I do think we're going to need maybe a little bit of a bigger bar though this time.
We do, because you were at the pub party. Okay,
Yeah.
one thing I want to toss your way before we wrap up is, can you just kind of explain what the international appetite is from your perspective of how exciting is it to have more of an NFL presence across Europe?
Yeah, so what I can talk from is like our European fan perspective, right? I mean, I think the Colts came to Germany in 2023, and I think, as far as my perspective, I think you guys got on the plane and were like, wow, this was way better than we ever thought it would be. And the bar in Frankfurt, you couldn't even, you had to walk around like that.
Yeah.
It was so busy there. So
That was before Edgerrin James showed up.
yeah, right. I mean, it was incredibly busy, and the line outside, everything, like the whole 9 yards. And then I think we also thought, hey, let's put our strengths together. Like, I'm in the Netherlands, we have a ton of fans in Germany, we have a ton of fans in the UK, we have some fans down in Spain and Portugal. So we tried to combine those in the Blue Crew Europe fan crew, which we have. It's on JJ's laptop right
Got a
over
fresh
here.
sticker here.
And I mean, as far as I can tell, like as soon as we had the announcement of the Colts are coming back to Germany, we're coming zurück, which was the announcement, the group just exploded. Like, my phone was exploding, and everyone was like, okay, we're super fired up for them to be here. And I think, like you said, like on the podcast before, it's not just parachuting in, right? You're just not going to play a game there, and not just to, okay, we're going to play a game here and we're going to go back home. Really establishing the brand, and I think that's what our fans are the most excited about as well. That you can just maybe go to a store and buy some Colts stuff. Maybe go to some events with some players, like get Bernie over there a lot more and do some events with him. I think that's what they're excited for the most as well. Not only the games, but also what comes along with it.
I love that.
Heck yeah. That's great. Lucas, thanks for hopping on,
Well,
man.
thank you for having me. Truly appreciate it. This is something I will never forget.
Well, Jeffrey's already left the room, so I'll wrap up the podcast. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of the Official Colts Podcast. We'll be back next week for our annual, it's Tuesday of free agency week, and we can't totally talk about stuff show. It's the best.
Great.
But then you'll have Casey Valier and Bill Brooks on Instant Reaction as soon as the new league year opens on Wednesday to react to whatever signings the Colts do make. We'll have some stuff, though, planned for next week. That'll be fun, kind of keeping everyone updated on what's going on as best as we can. For Larra Overton, for Lucas Lejeune, for Jeffrey Gorman, I'm JJ Stankevitz. Thanks for watching this episode of the Official Colts Podcast. Talk to you next week.